Welcome back, Roger Wars, to the United Nations Rookie Summit. For you guys, it might have been a couple hours, it might have been a day, it might have been two. For us, it's been merely minutes because we are back covering the Edge class. I'm your host, Corbin, joined with Ross, and Sanity is being insane. How are we doing, Sanity is being insane?
My internet's choppy, so I'm missing a lot here.
Well, I was just saying hello and
Hi.
introducing the Edge class for our audience. Today, we're going to be talking about four guys along with our sleepers, but we'll be covering Abdul Carter out of Penn State, Mike Green out of Marshall, Shamar out of Texas A&M, and Jalen Walker from Georgia. So let's get into our rankings last year and some of our sleepers. Tyler, how did we do?
All right. Last year, I did not show up. Can't remember why. I think I was installing a light and lost internet, which I'm losing internet today too. It's weird. So the last year we did Jared Verse, whatever that guy's name is, Lily Latu or whatever. Dallas Turner, Darius Robinson, and Chop Robinson. In the rankings, Ross had Verse, Latu, Turner, Darius Robinson, and Chop Robinson. Corbin had Verse, Latu. You guys had the same. Never mind. Stats wise, Verse had 17 games, 66 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 0 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. He was drafted 19th overall by the Rams in round 1. Latu had 17 games played, 32 tackles, 4 sacks, 0 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles. He was drafted 15th overall by Indy in round 1. Turner, 16 games played, 20 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 interception, 0 forced fumbles. He was drafted 17th overall by the Minnesota Vikings in round 1. Darius Robinson, 6 games, 10 tackles, 1 sack, 0-0, round 1, 27th overall by Arizona. Chop Robinson, 17 games, 26 tackles, 6 sacks, 0 INTs, 0 forced fumbles, round 1, 21 overall by Miami. Now, their sleepers. Ross had Muhammad Kamara. Muhammad Kamara played 5 games, had 1 tackle, 0 sacks, 0 interceptions, 0 forced fumbles, drafted round 5, 158th overall by Miami. Corbin had Marshawn Kneeland. Kneeland played 11 games, 14 tackles, 0 sacks, 0 interceptions, 0 forced fumbles. Was drafted round 2, 56th overall by Dallas. Thank you.
Stats aren't a good indicator because Kneeland is coming on. Keep an eye out for him. I really, really like that pick. I forgot he picked him. But, yeah, and I want to give a shout-out to Latu also because Jared Verse did a lot of the hype. And, obviously Ross and I both had him ranked number 1. But if I remember correctly, Latu was up there for me too. He had his neck injury, and a lot of people were knocking him. But I like what I saw from him coming out of college, and he did have some good production his rookie year for the Colts. So first defensive player drafted last year in the draft. So yeah, let's get into it, guys. We'll talk about this year's Edge class. Again, just the 4 guys, and then we'll do our rankings and sleepers. We'll kick it off with Abdul Carter, coming out of Penn State. He's 21 years old, a junior coming out of college, measured in at 6'3", 250 pounds, with no RAS score. I saw online, it's just rumored that he runs a 4.48 40. Last year, he had 68 tackles. 43 of those were solo, with 24 tackles for a loss, which led NCAA football, although it was in 16 games, just because Penn State was in the playoffs, so he had a little a couple extra games in there to squeak that out. But he also had 12 sacks and 2 forced fumbles with 0 interceptions. And then 2023, he had 48 tackles. 25 of those were solo, 6 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, a forced fumble, and a pick. He's an All-American, the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, and he's really just starting to scratch the surface of his potential, in my opinion. He's got 3 years of high-end production, including as a true freshman as a stand-up linebacker for Penn State. Just a really, really explosive guy. I mean, that first step just really stands out to me on tape, and that's something that I look for in my edge prospects is how fast they get off the line of scrimmage. There was a few guys like Landon Jackson out of Arkansas, for example, I was really high on, but he just doesn't have that, explosive first step. He's slow to get off the line of scrimmage. And I think that is really a very good indicator of success for edge rushers in the NFL. And Abdul Carter's got it. There's a reason why people are saying he should be the number 1 pick in the draft, and he's the best player in this entire class. What do you think, Ross?
Yeah, like that's the first thing you see. Obviously, it's like he's shot out of a cannon. It's like he's jumping the snap like every single time. Like it's like he's just half a second quicker than everyone, but he's just that quick. And he's so twitchy. He just moves in such a unique way. Like you watch everyone else in this class, and it's clear to see why he's the number 1 guy. He's fluid as well, and he's changing directions. He's not just like a straight line guy off the snap. And if you don't get beat off the snap, then he's got nothing. He does have some moves, like he's changed direction. He does that crossing the body of the defender, and once he's set you up outside, he'll come inside and absolutely done. Like he's so disruptive. Like 24 tackles for loss. He just lives in the backfield, and he's playing a million miles an hour, like in every snap. And I think he's obviously only had 1 season at the position, which is crazy to think, like how much better he can get. He's got some power as well. So obviously he was primarily a linebacker beforehand, an off-ball linebacker, and I think that power and that hitting ability shows up as well. Like he's not afraid to take on blockers and pullers, and he just plays with a little bit more physicality. He's not just like an undersized speed rusher. For me, anyway, he's got that violence in his game, and as well, he played through a shoulder injury, like tail end of the season, and he's still like the best player on the field. I think it was a Boise State game where he got injured. You wouldn't think he only had like 1 shoulder, and he was still like ramming into guys, and he playing with that physicality and that violence. And yeah, I think he's a very, very good prospect. It's difficult to see many weaknesses in him. The one thing I would say is that his contact balance. So I think he spends a little bit more time on the ground than you'd expect. Like sometimes you'll get around the edge of a tackle and they'll give him a little push and he's on the ground. But yeah, that's probably nitpicking because most of the time he's just living in the backfield, using his athleticism, using his God-given abilities to just be so disruptive.
Yep. Yeah, the violence is one thing that stood out to me. A very, very violent tackle. I mean, he's got some big hits, a couple of fumbles in his career. So, yeah, he's got the highlight tape to support that possible number 1 overall selection. Likely number 2, but what do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, everything you guys said. Switch, really fast, great first step. One of the best athletes in this draft. A couple things on him. He started off as a linebacker and then moved to edge. And using that linebacker background, he's kind of excellent at blowing up screens and outside runs. But also with that, he's still learning a lot at the edge position, so he could even be better. 2024, he had misdemeanor assault charges. And he did a rehabilitation program for it. No time or nothing. But I was just reading up. Apparently, his car was being towed. And he kind of attacked the tow truck driver and pulled him out of the tow truck and then wouldn't let him back into the tow truck because he thought the guy was just trying to steal his car. He didn't think he had the credentials to actually tow his vehicle. So there's a court hearing about that. It was kind of brushed under the, but shows that there's some, if somebody was towing your car, would you immediately get physical?
I mean, if I was going to Bill Carter, I might.
Well,
When you
that's
can
the
literally
thing.
kick the shit out of anybody that you walk across, then yeah, I would probably lean on that a little bit.
It just makes you wonder: is he going to be like if he's an NFL star? Is he going to be able to handle off field shit that happens?
Just need to
I
picture
think it's
every
just
tackle as a tow truck driver, and then he'll be fine.
yeah, exactly. No, I mean, he's still 21 years old. I mean, when this happened, it was what 2024, so he's 20 years old. I mean, he's still a kid, and I don't think at the NFL, when you have millions of dollars, it's going to be a big deal if your car gets towed, So yeah, I know about it, but like you wouldn't have even heard about that if you didn't really do some digging. Like no one's talking about that because there's no like character
Right.
concerns with the guy. It's
That's
just
what
that
I'm
one
here
little
for.
blip, just the one blip on the radar. So no, I'm not concerned about it at all. I mean, as an edge rusher, he's really the whole package. I mean, about as clean of a prospect, huh?
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I always go third in this, and basically, I'm the guy looking for dirt because you guys always say the good stuff. So you'll find that I'm finding things to say the dirt on.
Kevin Costner on draft day,
pessimistic.
getting your security guy to check if people were at his birthday party. That's your role.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Abdul Carter's about as clean of an edge prospect as you're going to get. There's a couple of things, like Ross said, like nitpicking. Like, I didn't really notice anything about contact balance. Like, maybe you were just watching different tape than I was. But I saw great bend around the edge, the ability to drop the hips and use that leverage to get around the outside. The violence we already mentioned. The motor and his hustle, too, just not ever giving up on a play. You see that when a ball carrier breaks to the outside. He's got the pursuit to chase him down. He's got the speed and the athleticism to do so. The one area I think that he could improve is he's not necessarily a technician. He's got a couple good moves. He's got a great spin, rush. He's got a cross chop. But I see him leaning a little bit more and relying on his athleticism as opposed to his tactics. And, there's a couple more moves and counters that you can be coached up on. So that's just something to look out for. And some of these bigger, stronger, longer tackles, he can get washed down by him, like he was double teamed quite a bit. But, most guys, you're not going to win these double team races. I mean, that's why they do it. So there is a little bit to be desired, but I mean, that first step, the violence, the hustle, just that raw athleticism he has. I mean, I totally understand why he's in consideration to be the first overall pick in the NFL draft. Yeah, he's a great player, and he's absolutely somebody who'll be on our rosters maybe as early as the late first. It's just kind of tough to predict because this, the running backs and the receivers, quarterbacks, they might wash it down to the early second, but you're going to be happy with Abdul Carter if he's on your fantasy team.
Opposite Myles Garrett, getting one-on-ones. That sounds pretty good to me.
Could be, and that would be awesome, honestly. That would be crazy because he's not going to get any doubles. He's going to have one-on-ones, and he is going to blow them up. Yeah, maybe keep an eye out for linebackers if he goes there too, because if you're doubling both, I mean, someone's going untouched. That's probably going to be the linebacker on a blitz. So, but yeah, I mean, he passes the eye test. You turn on the tape and you see why he's probably going to be the number 2 overall pick. He's a really, really good player. So,
yeah, let's move on to Mike Green, a smaller school prospect coming out of Marshall, 21 years old. He's listed as a sophomore, but he's technically a junior. He had 1 year at Virginia before moving over to Marshall for his last 2 years, but measured in at 6'3", 251 pounds, no RAS score. He only did bench, which he had 28 reps, which is elite. He also had a 6.85 3-cone, which only 8 edge rushers have ever done that since 1999. And I mentioned the 3-cone drill in our tight ends episode. That's a great indicator for that lateral agility. You see that in like your linemen, your edge rushers. And I think even for receivers, if you're below a 7, that's a great score. So he is a 6.85 as an edge rusher. He's got some athleticism. It shows up in his tape and in the stat sheet. Last year, he had 84 tackles. 38 of those were solo with 23 tackles for a loss. That was in only 13 games as opposed to Abdul Carter's 26 in 16 games. He also had 17 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, no interceptions. And then 2023 had 43 tackles. 22 of those were solo, with 9 tackles for a loss, 4.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. I mentioned he started off at Virginia as a stand-up linebacker. He's a former wrestler, and you can kind of see that in his game with his hand usage, slipping blocks. He really, like I had a friend mention him to me, like he might be a good fit for the Lions before the Senior Bowl. Wasn't on my radar, but I think he kind of exploded onto the scene after his Senior Bowl performance. If you haven't seen it yet, look up his one-on-one drill versus Josh Connerly out of Oregon. He's a tackle for Oregon, and he was kind of predicted to be like a first-round pick, late first-round pick, and I have not seen him in a single mock draft going in the first round since the Senior Bowl because Mike Green absolutely destroys him. You got to look up that clip. There's a reason why Connerly's not going in the first round anymore, and that's because of his performance versus Mike Green. So obviously an insane athlete, a smaller school guy, but he's got the stats to back it up. So how the hell can he possibly fall? I'll let the dirty boy Tyler give you the scoop on this guy. What do you got, Tyler?
Well, first of all, let's get into some of the things I've seen and read. He was a highly recruited wrestler in high school. I don't think you mentioned that. That wrestling background has allowed him to has really helped with his hands with
And
the
using
linemen.
blocks.
Yeah. He also used to be a linebacker, same as Carter, and he was moved to edge. But we'll get into the dirt. He's been charged or accused, I should say, of sexual assault twice. In high school, he was charged with sexual assault. The police investigated it, and they closed the case. Nothing ever came of it.
Drop charges.
In Virginia, or at Virginia, he was accused by an unidentified individual who he never got to find out his accuser, but he was accused for sexual assault, and he was suspended. I can't find anywhere what they say the length of the suspension was. Could it have been the season he missed? Maybe. I don't know. It doesn't say. But he did defend this at the combine when it was brought up. He said in both cases, he's never been interviewed. He's never been questioned by police or anybody about it. At Virginia, they wanted him to stay, but after being suspended without being able to, what's the word? Defend himself.
All right.
He decided a fresh start at Marshall was probably best for him. And again, nothing happened with the suspension or the accuser. We don't know what happened, but he's got 2 charges of sexual assault out there. So when this guy gets drafted, keep him away from the massage tables. Because something's going on with this guy.
So he's out with the Browns. Can't have 2 of those guys in the same locker room.
Yeah.
All right.
Dangerous, man. Keep him away from Robert Kraft.
Hey, Robert Kraft can teach him how to do it properly.
Jesus, I want Robert Kraft teaching me that. Jesus Christ. Yeah, well, all right, Tyler. I'm sick of all these negatives. Ross, tell me something good about this guy.
I think he's amazing. There's something good. No, he's an all-round edge player. So, like you mentioned, his power that he's got, but I think he's got a good blend of that with some finesse and some speed moves as well. To rush the passer, I think I seen him use a variety of moves. He sets up defenders with his bull rush, and then he can then use his first step quickness as they're expecting the bull rush. And he's got some dip around the edge. He's got some bend in him as well. Like I mentioned, his 3-cone, and that really shows up as well. You see that as he gets to round the edge to the quarterback. The question is obviously the level of competition, But for me, when you turn on that Ohio State tape, it was very, very good. And that's against two offensive tackles who are probably going to be first, at worst, second round picks. He pulls off like a great spin move, like an inside, and closes down the quarterback like very quickly. And that's those sort of flashes against like top college talent just show his ceiling. I think he also plays with good strength as well, and like he can hold the point of attack and become like a decent run defender at the next level. And that's something you don't see throughout the rest of the class. Like either guys are decent run defenders and they hold the point of attack, or they're doing that sort of trying to avoid the tackle and go round the guy. And that's just difficult to project on a down-to-down basis. But yeah, I think Mike Green, I think he's worthy of being like top half of the first round kind of guy being talked about. I think he's very well rounded for me, and he can definitely become a 3-down linebacker at the next level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot, in my opinion, that separates him from Abdul Carter. I mean, the first step, it's just as explosive as Abdul Carter. I would almost say that he projects as a better run defender than Abdul Carter. For somebody of his size, I mean, he gets after it. He has no problem setting the edge. But again, like you got the Ohio State game, but a lot of his games were against lower level competition. So it's tough to kind of make that projection. And there's some other guys we'll talk about today, but when you're looking at these edge guys, it's not always about production. It's about traits. And I like to see some production because it validates those traits. And he absolutely has the production to go along with his traits. You had mentioned his bend around the edge. He's only 6'3", and that almost helps him get like a little lower and just kind of duck those tackles when he's going to the outside. I think he has a better bag of tricks than Abdul Carter too. He's got a dirty cross trap and a spin counter. He's got a swim. He's got a bull and speed to power. I think his hand usage is better than Abdul Carter's too. He consistently beats these longer tackles, even though he's on the smaller side. And it's because he can get into them with his hands and he can kind of dictate what he wants to do from there. On the other side, though, there are times where the tackle engages first and he can struggle to get off of the block at that point. But when you're talking a guy who's 6'3", 250 pounds, that's always going to be the case. Once they get into you, it's pretty much over. With Abdul Carter, you saw a little bit more fight to his game when he, was engaged first by an offensive lineman. So, but yeah, like really good motor. He sets a good edge. No questions about his pursuits. I mean, the biggest questions are, him coming from a smaller school, that level of competition. And then obviously what happened in high school in Virginia. I mean, one time, like with Abdul Carter, you could just chalk it up to as a nothing burger. But I mean, he's got 2 different sexual assault allegations. And, like he might not have any charges, but I mean, it's 2 different women in 2 different states that are accusing him of this. I mean, you at least have to think that maybe something's going on. And, Tyler, I think we read kind of, the same articles because he has done nothing but deny it. And he said he could have gone back to Virginia, but he just wanted a fresh start somewhere. But then you listen to what his coach says, and he's just very cheeky about the situation. Like he's not on the team as of now. He's not on the team as of now. So it almost leads me to believe that there was something going on. And, we've seen guys like this before, like Micah Parsons. They come into the NFL and they absolutely dominate, and you never think about the issues they had in college or high school or whatever it might be. And then there's other times where it just keeps on going, it just translates into the NFL. And they might be out of the league. So I can see why teams would be apprehensive to put him in a top 10 selection. And it's because of the off the field issues, because everything in his game, it really checks out. I mean, there's not a whole lot of knocks against him. Yeah, I mean, sometimes like he'll contain when he's trying to make a play, just make a highlight because he was the best player on the field. But I mean, a lot of these things are coachable. There's not a whole lot of knocks against him other than the off field stuff.
Just one point on that. You can say like nothing came of them, and but I mean, Virginia did suspend him, and he says, "Oh, Virginia can." At that time, they can suspend you for anything.
Yeah,
they did suspend him. The coach is very, like you said, cheeky about it, but he did agree to do and did do the rehabilitation program.
The
So
rehab
there's
program,
gotta
I
be
don't give a shit
something
about.
there. Well,
The
there's got to be
rehab
something.
shit I don't care about though, dude. Like that's just all bullshit optics for the university. It's the same with Abdul Carter. A rehab. Come on. Like that's all bullshit.
Listen,
I mean, it's two different people. Like there's obviously some legs to this. The only question is this in his past or is this going to be a problem that persists into his NFL career? And, based on his track record, I mean, it's fair to assume like, maybe it's immaturity. Like he could grow out of it. I don't know. That's the question mark. And there's such a gray area. Are you willing to spend, a high second round pick in your draft on a guy who has clear character concerns? That's the only question I have. And the talent might outweigh that. It might for you, it might not for me. Like we'll see how it shakes out, but very polarizing in that regard. But yeah, obviously a little tension there on the Mike Green, but I mean, I like the player. It's just if it wasn't for those off-field stuff, I mean, I think there's an argument between him and Abdul Carter. But with that, there's just so much uncertainty, you can't put him over him. So
I disagree
let's
slightly
move
in that
on.
in terms of talent, but I still like the player. Yeah, we'll get to rankings later on, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll see how he stacks up. But let's move on to our number 3 guy for today, Shemar Stewart, coming out of Texas A&M. He's a 21-year-old junior, 6'5", 267 pounds. We got a RAS score, finally. It is a 10.0, a perfect RAS. He's got elite size, a 4.59 40, elite splits, elite explosion. He did not do agility testing. Now, this is kind of getting back to what I was saying about traits over production, where, the NFL tends to value traits over production. And Shemar Stewart is a perfect example of that because he's going top 20 in most mocks that you'll see today. Last year, only 31 tackles, 14 of those solos, 6 TFLs, 1.5 sack, 1 forced fumble. That's it. 2023, worse, 11 tackles, 5 of those solo, 2 TFLs, 1.5 sack, no forced fumbles, no interceptions. So, I mean, you can pretty much throw the stats out of the window with this guy. I mean, he doesn't have them, but there's a reason why he's getting first-round traction. He's a former 5-star recruit. He's got those elite traits. He was one of the top prospects in the country coming into college football in 2022. He really stood out at the Senior Bowl where you could really see his skill set on full display. He's one of the higher upside pass rushers in this class. I just think a lot of people can't get over that lack of production. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about Shemar Stewart. Kick it off, Ross.
Well, I think in broad picture, you sort of mentioned it earlier. I think athleticism at the edge position is very important, and I'm willing to give up production in order to find that athletic guy. There's obviously been a few guys in recent years who have been, like, if you think about the spectrum of, or I suppose it's a graph of athlete to production, like you want someone who's more of an athlete than necessarily high production, not a very good athlete. And in saying that, Shemar Stewart is obviously a 10 RAS. He's physically very gifted. It's clear to see. And it does show on tape how athletic he is. But to me, like, he does not know what to do with it. Like, I'm so down on him. Like, he doesn't win often enough against the player in front of him. Edge sometimes comes down to very simple win against the guy in front of you. Like, and with his elite athleticism, he needs to win more. On a down-to-down basis, he's like a passenger. He's a complete passenger. I don't think he plays with that violence that you want from a guy of his stature. Like we talked about Abdul Carter, who's, I don't know, 30 pounds or 20 pounds smaller than him. He doesn't play with the same level of violence that a guy like Carter does. And to be honest, the big thing, he doesn't have any hands. Like he plays like he has no hands. He doesn't know what to do with them. It's like that guy in Talladega Nights. I don't know what to do with my hands. When he wins with power because he's just running his big body into the person in front of him and he just has no plan. And a lot of the time he doesn't know where the ball is. Like he's in the backfield thinking he's made a great play, he's thinking he's being disruptive, but the ball's in the other direction. Like the running backs took a step to the side, or the tackle's just thrown him into the backfield when the ball's not even going that way. The slightest bit of misdirection has him confused and completely negated on the play. And to be honest, I think it makes him a very difficult to see him being successful lining up anywhere. You know what I mean? Like even if he's kicked inside or whatever, I just don't see how it's going to translate. Like, great athlete, very good. To show me how it's going to become a good NFL player. I just don't see it whatsoever.
Okay. All right. Hot take from Ross there. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I got down, he's strong like bull. Got a relentless motor. Better run defender than pass rusher, but he does excel at both. But he needs to work on his technique with the pass rush. He relies way too much on his athleticism, which is very good for his size. But yeah, but I couldn't find any dirt on this guy. Pretty sure he grew up, being a Saint. So maybe he goes to the Saints. I don't know.
He could be. I see him going there.
But
Yeah, that could be a good Cam Jordan replacement there. Yeah, I mean, obviously the athleticism's off the charts with this guy. I liked his first step. I mean, I thought it was pretty good. I didn't think that it was like Abdul Carter, Mike Green level, but I think I had it as a great first step, which is the most important thing for me. He's got that versatility to play anywhere on the line, 3 tech and out. You can bump him down on third down as like an interior pass rusher, and then you can have a pass rush specialist on the outside where Carter and Green are more just exclusively those edge rushing, pass rush kind of guys. What really stands out to me is his ability to stop the run, where you got Green and Carter, who are pure pass rushers. Shamar Stewart gives you a little bit of both. You want a guy who can set the edge. That indicates you have a guy who can play all 3 downs. I might not have, that MVP ceiling, but he could be a solid contributor for your fantasy team just because of, 1, the play time, and 2, his ability to stop the run at the line of scrimmage. Obviously, like, the stats are the biggest concern, but from everything that I've heard, it's Texas A&M just used their D-line in a very strange way. Nick Scorton, he's another guy who's getting some first-round, second-round chatter. He came from Purdue, and he had a huge fall-off between Purdue and Texas A&M. I can't remember the exact stats off the top of my head, but it was a tremendous fall-off. And both of them have publicly said it's Texas A&M scheme. And that their job for the defense just is it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And, Ross, you had mentioned like the traits over production argument. You've got like Trayvon Walker, like Ziggy Ansah, Danielle Hunter. Like, these are all guys coming out who are top 10 picks. Well, maybe not top 10. Well, yeah, I can't remember where Danielle Hunter went, but first round guys. And it's all because of their traits. And so he's got the athleticism. He's got that first step. He's an insane athlete. And for somebody his size, really, really good bend around the edge too. For a taller guy, you usually don't see that. And then he's also got like a really relentless motor. He's always chasing after a ball carrier. He's never giving up on plays. But as a pass rusher, he is still very raw. He really only has his bull rush and his speed to power. He doesn't have, he's no technician by any means. With Mike Green and Abdul Carter, at least they have a couple of moves that they can hang their hat on. This is something that's coachable, but it just kind of shows like he's just relying on his God-given gifts as opposed to, learning some moves that are going to help him out at the NFL. He needs to develop a couple go-tos and have some kind of a plan going in because Ross, you had mentioned like once he gets there, he doesn't know what to do. So like he needs some refinement for sure. He's a little too raw. There was times where I saw his pad level was a little bit too high for these taller guys. That's usually an issue. He's got to stay low and keep his leverage. But yeah, I don't put him in the same talent level as Mike Green and Abdul Carter for right now, but the athleticism's there. He's very coachable. He's definitely a first round pick. It's tough to say, I'm not quite as low on him as Ross is, but there are some concerns. So I see, why you're lower on him than most are, Ross.
Yeah, and everyone says he's better at the run, but that's because he's very, very bad at the pass against the pass. But even as a run defender, like he has no stats. So it's not just that he didn't finish sacks and he didn't have he wasn't good at pressuring the quarterback, but he was good as a run defender. He has 65 combined tackles in over 3 years. He played for 3 years. 65 combined tackles over 3 years. Abdul Carter has 68 this year. Mike Green has 84 this year. Jalen Walker, who we're going to talk about, has 60 this year. So he's just not productive in any facet. And fair enough, you can project it. In 3-4 years, is he going to become a good fantasy guy? I'm no buying it. I'm no drafting this guy. He's not productive anywhere.
Mhm.
Not even I didn't see it on tape either. Like I don't see any upside to me other than the combine. Other than that, like I don't see it. I really don't
Yeah.
see it.
The tape is weird because you don't have like any plays like boom, there it is, because he just doesn't have those sack numbers. He doesn't have the TFLs where there's not a huge sample size where you can look at all these and see how he wins. So I mean, like for me, it's really just his initial burst off the line of scrimmage, that athleticism that you see, and just imagine if he just develops a couple of go-to pass rush moves. I mean, we've seen it in the NFL, like players that are very, very raw, they do pan out. So, I mean, the production is concerning, but I would rather he's set up this way. If he was high production but zero athleticism, I'd rather have an athletic guy with zero production any day. So, I'm not out on him by any means, but it's interesting to see where he'll go. He might be a little bit of a slower start to his career and as a fantasy contributor, but I think that he can turn it on after a year or two with NFL coaching. So let's get to our last guy here, Jalen Walker. I thought this was going to be the most contentious of the pod, but maybe it's Shamar Stewart. Jalen Walker's out of Georgia, a 21-year-old junior, measured in at 6'1", 243 pounds, with no RAS to speak of. Very poor size at 6'1", 243. But another rumor I saw on the internet, he ran a 4.5 40. Last year, he had 60 tackles. 37 of those were solo for 11 TFLs, 6.5 sacks, no fumbles or interceptions. And then 2023 had 20 tackles. 14 of those were solo, with 6 TFLs, 5 sacks, and a forced fumble to go along with it. 5-star recruit out of college, 3 years of playing time at Georgia, including some snaps when they won the Natty, I think like 2022. Started as a pass rush specialist, but he evolved into an every down player for the Bulldogs. And he's comped to Nolan Smith, former Georgia Bulldog, and I kind of like it, like an undersized guy, speed rusher with that linebacker edge, kind of hybrid versatility. But is that hybrid looked at as an advantage, or is that a disadvantage coming in the NFL? Is he more of a tweener? What do you think, Ross?
Yeah, well, I'm going to shock you because I love Jalen Walker. He is a classic guy when I'm thinking about production and athleticism. And his production wasn't bad. It was actually down to his opportunity. And I'm not entertaining the idea that he's a linebacker at the next level. Like he is going to be an edge rusher, and it's because of the edge rusher traits that he flashes. He's incredibly athletic. He's like that twitchy sort of explosive guy off the line. He's got great change of direction, and I just think he's an intelligent player as well. So when I'm talking about Shamar Stewart being lacking all intelligence, Jalen Walker's the exact opposite. I think he keeps his eyes in the backfield on the runner. He's aware of like the QB movements in the pocket, and that's where you see his closing speed as well. When he's closing in on the quarterback, getting those sacks, and he's very high motor as well. And I think having a high motor is something that we normally reserve for players who we don't have anything else to say about them. But for me, I think it's very important. Like you look at Jared Verse, like he only had like 4.5 sacks last year, but his motor got plays, he got tackles, he picked up those plays where he's running 10, 15 yards down the field, picking up those extra tackles. And that's great for fantasy. That's exactly what you want, just those 3 points because a guy's not giving up on the play. And Walker, similar to Abdul Carter, because of he's a former linebacker, he plays with that violence and aggression. When there's a pulling guard or something, he's going right at his chest and he's not afraid to hit him. And I just think he moves in a different way from everyone else outside of Carter. But I love it. He's so intriguing, and the problem is he's a small sample size. I wrote it down. He only had 249 snaps on the defensive line, and that's also including like lining up in the A gap as a blitzer, as a linebacker. I don't know what his true lined up outside as an edge rusher snaps are, but it's not many. And this is his first year as a starter as well. So it's incredibly small sample size, but I'm going to bet on the traits, on the flashes that I've seen that are very, very high level and like literally probably second best in the class for me.
Wow. Okay. Some high praise. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah. Sorry, the wife was texting me, so I missed a lot of what you guys said. So sorry if I repeat myself, but I got down. He's a great technician, quick first step, great hands. He's smart. He breaks up plays. He's bendy and agile, but he does lack starters experience. He is the older brother of four-star recruit Deuce Walker, who we will be talking about in a year or two. And his dad is a college level head coach. So, or college level coach. So it's an athletic family, and he's getting a lot of insight coaching from his dad, probably growing up, so probably attributes to why he's so smart on the field and stuff, it's probably, he's a leader. I like him, and you'll see that in my rankings.
I mean, I like Jalen Walker, and he's a first-round pick, but I don't know what it was, but I think it's just the speed rusher perception that I have of him in my head because, he is violent, but against a lot of the bigger offensive linemen, that's where you see his production fall off. And if he's going to be an exclusive edge rusher, he's like back in college, he's splitting times between off-ball linebacker and edge. You got to pick a full-time position. And I think he's better suited as an edge rusher. And so you're not going to have that versatility. And I can see him just as a situational third down pass rusher. So that's one of my biggest concerns. Also with these speed rushers, you don't get the high tackle numbers. You might have a higher ceiling with sacks. You might have a higher ceiling as a fantasy football player, but a lot of times it's not very safe. It's like Nolan Smith, like everyone in the NFL, especially because of the Eagles Super Bowl run, they know Nolan Smith. They think he's a great player. But if you look at the fantasy to him as a fantasy contributor, it's just not really there. But I mean, as a prospect, he's got everything you want, like the great first step. He's got good bend around the edge, uses his hands well, and understands leverage. Very high motor kind of guy. I thought he was pretty solid against the run for somebody his size, and he's got the coverage skill too, especially in zone. So in a 3-4, he's a solid Sam linebacker. But Ross, you had mentioned the limited experience. He only had 11 college starts, even though he was playing every single game. And I don't know if he's more of an in-betweener or a hybrid. It depends on where he goes and how the coaching staff decides to deploy him in their defense. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is just as a smaller size, and this goes with every speed rusher, when a lineman gets their hands into you, you're not going to be able to get off. When you got a guy like Abdul Carter and Mike Green, even that extra 10 pounds can make a difference. And Shamar Stewart, he can shed that stuff. But you just don't see that as much with Jalen Walker. He has to beat you right away. But if the lineman, and when you're at an NFL talent starting offensive tackle, more likely than not, they're going to win those reps. So he just needs a couple every single game, but I just wonder if he's going to have a lot of value on first and second down, at least in his first couple of years. I mean, you saw with Nolan Smith, he was a first-round pick, and it wasn't just until this year where he finally got his legs under him, and, you could make an argument he was a solid fantasy contributor. So I like him as a player going in the NFL draft, but for fantasy football, there's some guys I prefer over him, to be honest. Even his teammate, Michael Williams, I think that he would be a safer fantasy football asset than Jalen Walker.
That's interesting. I do get the comparison to Nolan Smith. I never thought about it until now, but that's pretty good. And yeah, the concerns about him at the maybe holding the point of attack and getting shedding and getting those tackles, that's not the kind of player he is right now anyway. He is that gap shooting kind of guy, and yeah, that's maybe not consistent tackle production at the next level.
Yeah.
So I do see the concerns, and obviously he is still a big projection. I don't think we'll see much in year one, unless he's taken very high, and then he's maybe going to a team who needs production year one. He just gets a lot of snaps. But in terms of, he's not going to be the finished player for a few years anyway.
Yeah, I almost I mean, they're totally different players, but kind of like Chop Robinson too. He was more like a speed rusher.
Yeah.
And so you see the high sack numbers, and that's very valuable for an NFL team, but they're just like tackles are just so much more consistent. And so if you're more involved in the run game and obviously first and second down packages, you just get more fantasy points. So that's why I'm a little bit lower on him. I don't think you're super far off. I'm not going to say you're dumb for putting him over, some of these guys. So let's get into the rankings here and really see how it stacks up, and then I can make my my arguments. Tyler, how about you kick it off? How do you rank these guys?
So I got Carter number 1 because obviously he's pretty much the can't miss prospect, right? And if the guy's going number 2 overall, I mean, he better not be can't miss. And then I have Walker 2. No comment. Okay. Green would be 2, but I just don't like the allegations. So I'm dropping him down. But Green will be 3. And then I'm kind of with Ross on Stewart.
Yes.
Unless Stewart steps up and says, look what I can do. He's my number 4.
Okay. Well, he did that at the Senior Bowl. When's he going to have a chance? Poor guy. All right. Anyways, Ross, was that you who did the Stewart?
Yeah.
That was Tyler.
Oh.
I was thrown for a loop. All right, go ahead, Ross. How do you rank these guys?
Yeah. Similar. I'm Abdul Carter. I think he's clearly the number 1 guy. I think I'll go with Mike Green next. I do like Jalen Walker, but he is more of a projection. So depends depends how late he is in terms of the roster wars draft. You know what I mean? Like if he could just sit in the taxi squad for a few years, he might be worth it for the higher upside. But I'll go Carter, Green, Walker, about 4 tier breaks, and then Shamar Stewart.
Yeah. Yep, no surprises here. We've got 3 people ranking Abdul Carter number 1. I've got him there as well. Number 2 for me, I've got Mike Green because, I mean, the production, the traits, it's all there. It's literally all just the off-field stuff. Talent-wise, I put him right up there with Abdul Carter. But you could see him fall a little bit on draft day just because I'm sure some teams might have him off his board, similar to, why can't I think of his name, the tackle for Georgia who went to the Eagles, Jalen Carter. Yeah. Something similar to that is kind of what I could foresee for him, but he'll be a first-round pick, no question. 3rd, I've got Shamar Stewart. And 4th, I've got Jalen Walker. And the biggest difference for me these are both projection guys, but Shamar Stewart, I just see him as more of a 3-down player. He has that versatility where you can bump him into the interior and keep him on the edge. I don't think Jalen Walker is going to be getting off-ball linebacker snaps. I see him more as a Sam. Depending on the defense, he could be relegated just to 3rd down responsibilities. So both of these are, guys that we're projecting based on traits. And I think that especially at the beginning of their career, Shamar Stewart's going to have a lot more opportunity to see the field. So I know you guys are going to hate me for that one, but I guess I'm a little higher on Shamar than you guys. So let's get into the sleepers here. Tyler, who you got for us this year?
We're going to go Ross first.
All right, fine. Ross, kick it off.
Yeah, mine's is deeper, so hopefully I don't take any of your guys, but I'm going for Antoine Powell-Ryland out of Virginia Tech. So definitely a bit deeper. I don't think many defensive ends pan out past maybe the 1st and 2nd rounds, but I just like this guy. Like I went through quite a lot of these guys, and they're mostly just power guys who are good against the run. They're not well-rounded, but I see this guy, and I'll tell you his measurables: 6'3", 258 pounds. He's got a 9.12 RAS, and I also wrote down he had the highest speed in the 40-yard dash. So he didn't have the quickest time, but highest speed of everyone at the combine. But yeah, so he's a more well-rounded player. He just pops off the tape when you switch it on. He's playing at Virginia Tech, and he's got power in his hands. He's got speed around the edge, and he's also got like a couple of moves as well. Like he's got a great spin move. That's maybe his go-to, and he can finish with that as well. He had 9.5 sacks in 2023, 16 sacks in 2024, and decent tackle numbers as well. So in a class with like a lot of power rushers, I think he's maybe got more to his game, and I think he's a developmental guy. just because he's going to be a mid-round pick. But I think he can develop into a 3-down player eventually. That's my guy.
Yeah, I like that. All right, Tyler, you ready for us?
Yeah, I got Jared Ivey. Now, he can play on the D line. He's kind of played edge, he played edge and on the D line too, but 6'6", 274 pounds out of Ole Miss. As I said, I like his versatility. He's got outstanding length and leverage control. And he's probably best for a 4-3 scheme, and could be could be a first rounder. He's being projected maybe second or third, but depends on who's picking, who's liking. Could excel with the team if he goes to like a Baltimore or San Francisco. And yeah, he could develop into a 3-down rusher. So 3-down guy. I did read going into the gates of hell, or Reddit. And there's some talk that he does have some personality traits that he rubs some teammates the wrong way, but a lot of what Reddit is just, guys who don't know what they're talking about talking, so that I can talk about what they're talking about without knowing what I'm talking about. So
yeah, it's all hearsay on Reddit.
Exactly, Mondo. But I like him. I do like him. He's cute.
There's a couple of guys that are in that late first, second round conversation, and Ivy is one of them. Just because, like with me, I've been looking into a lot on what the Lions are doing. And edge rusher is kind of what everybody is kind of pounding the table for here. So there's a lot of guys that are on my radar, and some that I just don't want, like that Princely guy from Ole Miss. I don't like him. There's Donovan Azaraku from Boston College, which I think is a very, very high floor guy, maybe lower ceiling, but as a pure pass rusher, like he's a straight technician and really, really savvy. I didn't pick him though. I went with Nick Scorton coming out of Texas A&M. He's only 20 years old, so very young, junior coming out. He's the teammate of Shamar Stewart, and I was talking about him when we were discussing Stewart. But 6'3", 257 pounds, played for Texas A&M last year. Well, let me give it to you this way. Let's do Purdue 2023 first. He had 50 tackles, 33 of those were solo, 15 tackles for loss, 10 sacks, which led the Big Ten, and a forced fumble. He also had 2 sacks against Michigan, and he had 1 versus Ohio State. So those are 2 national title contributors. He's got 3 sacks between those 2 games. Very, very good production last year at Purdue. 2024, 37 tackles, 27 solo, 14 TFLs, 5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. So obviously 5 less sacks, 50% drop off between, his sophomore and junior season. TFL numbers are still the same, less tackles. But again, that's just kind of how Texas A&M deployed their defensive line. They weren't asked to do that much they weren't asked to do something that will show up in the stat sheet. But you could see his production still better than Shamar Stewart's. It's not great. It's a fall off, but that just kind of goes to show that maybe there is something going on with Texas A&M's D-line. But he's got a great first step. He's a technician out there. He's got a ton of different moves. He's got a great spin move, a swim, chop, swipe, speed, power, bull rush. He's got it all. Relentless motor. He's fighting through blocks, chasing down ball carriers in pursuit. Really solid versus the run. And, he has those pass rush skills. All of this combines to make you that 3-down player. And being just 20 years old, he's got plenty of room to grow. The biggest knock on him is he's very inflexible. You don't see that bend around the edge. You see him playing with a higher pad level. And as someone who's 6'3", you should have that advantage of getting lower than some of these 6'6" kind of guys. Especially in a 2-point stance, you see that he just does not play with the best leverage coming out of a 2-point. There's a couple of counters that he could develop. He struggles with some double teams, but I like the player. I mean, he's got flashes And when you're looking at a guy who's like an early second round, late first, that's really what you're looking for, is that potential. So I see that, the ceiling's there. I think he's got a pretty solid floor already, but at just 21 or 20 years old, he's got plenty of time to develop into a valuable fantasy contributor for your team. So I like Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M.
Yeah, I really, he's an intelligent player. He's a bigger body, but he's got a bit of finesse in the hands as well. And I think we see him quite similar. He's good in the run game as well. Can hold the line and make the tackle. So yeah, a good player. Like you said, well, I don't know if you said, but I think there's a lot of depth in this class. Like there's going to be a lot of guys in the second to third round, or maybe even late first, that are maybe teams are going to have to pick through what they like. But yeah, I think we see them very similar.
Yeah. And like you had mentioned too, with these edge rushers, unlike other positions, you pretty much have to get them in the first round. Everyone's going to say Max Crosby. Well, what else? Nobody else really pans out. If you want an elite pass rusher, you got to get him in the first. Do I think he's going to turn into, a defensive player of the year candidate, Scorton? No, but I think that he could be a very, very solid fantasy football contributor, playing all three downs with, decent run stopping and pass rushing skill set. So you could do a lot worse, and he might be a guy that'll go like 6th or 7th round. Maybe you could get him for pretty much nothing. Stash him on that taxi until he has a couple good games, and then you got like a plug and play guy. So, all right, guys, well done on that one. All right, we're getting through these pretty quickly here. I don't even know how many we have left. I think next week we'll be talking defensive tackles and defensive backs. We'll loop those in together. And then after that, we got running backs, and that's that. We are off to a great start this year, guys. Yeah, the NFL draft is almost upon us. I'm getting excited.
Yeah, the running backs are a big one. Save aside 3 hours for all these guys. We're going to talk about 15 guys deep, I think it is, the running back classes.
No, we'll keep it to 4. I don't want to give away all of my intel on some of these guys. 4 or 5. I guess we'll do 5. But yeah, it's tough to leave some of these guys off the list. We've got a lot of good running backs for sure. I haven't dove in deep just yet, but I'm excited to. But yeah, that's going to do it for us, guys. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with the defensive tackles and defensive backs.
Thanks. See you later.
Take care.